Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, getting any older? What does that mean? What does older mean? Wiser? I don't know. But it depends on your age.
Does it? Does it?
Yeah, my granddaughter has a different opinion about it. So in order to help us understand the aging process better and to hold on to a sense of self-empowerment that we have in life, whatever age we are, is the author, and a guest again on our show, the author of the book, The Road to Power, Fast Food for the Soul. And Barbara has been on our show many times, and I just love to talk with her. Barbara Berger, welcome back to
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be back.
And I'm so excited that we can talk about aging and getting older. I think, each of us has had a long journey that we can have perspective about, and even currently. And I think a lot of people, the audience, probably, I bet you that half our audience are 50 or older. And even those who are younger are concerned with their aging.
Seems like everyone is, right?
Right.
But apropos what you're just saying there, it's really, really interesting how much of our identity is age-based. I mean, if you think about, if someone tells you their age, if they're 35 or if they're 45 or if they're 55, as soon as you have that number, you have a whole sort of a program that goes with, okay, if you're 55, it means this and this and this. If you're 65, it means this. So how much of our identity is based on what we believe the age, the number means?
Right, and it really is superficial.
Very. Okay.
It does have, a social effect on how you're treated in society.
Exactly. But again, the thing that's so, if you really, I have actually tried it as a meditation. Who would you be if you didn't actually know your age? It's, no, but seriously,
I love that.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Just think about, if I actually didn't know my age, how would I wouldn't know how to act, actually. It's so programmed into us. So is
everything else.
It's an interesting experiment. If you just try to feel how you feel without thinking about how old I am, because that means I should act in a certain way.
Right, but it's hard to differentiate. We are talking about aging, and that's important to differentiate that. But everything that we know, everything we understand is programmed into us. And the best way, I think, to identify who we truly are is to look at a newborn and understand what they don't know and who they are.
And what they do know and what we don't know.
Well, that's true too. But, in Zen, for instance, they say, every day become a newborn.
Yeah.
And that really means, that don't be programmed into any superficial programs, but everything is. The only thing that's not.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Is just being awake. Pure awareness, being conscious, is the only pure thing that we have. Everything else is fiction.
I totally agree. Again, if we look at it in that way, the only thing that's real is the now, this now moment. Everything else is just a thought in our minds. The future is a thought in our mind, and the past is also a thought in our mind. There is no time. There is only now.
Right.
So it's all, the rest of it is a mental construction.
It's a story.
Yeah, it's a story.
Even our bodies are stories.
Yes. I totally agree where you're coming from. The other thing that I think is so important in this connection is that if we want to be free, it's really important to distinguish between, if we go back to the concept of time, the passage of time, and then for some reason or other, the collective consciousness, we have linked it to declining. So if we separate that, there's one thing is the passage of time, and the other thing is declining. They don't, because if we look at somebody who's 60 years old, I mean, you have people who are 60-year-olds who are really healthy and well and full of energy and in good shape, and you have also 60-year-old people who are really decrepit and who are, you know.
There are two things. There are two things about that. One is that genetically we're all different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I sometimes bemoan that I'm aging and declining, and I blame that my declining on my age, and then I realize it's not true, because there are many people my age who are different, who haven't declined as much as I have. So,
or maybe more.
Well, I know that I'm doing very well for my age, but there are people who do so much better, and they're much rarer in the world. But it's genes. You know, I look at people who can still run fast, and I can't. I've lost my leg speed, and it's just I don't even know how to imagine my legs going faster than they can go, and it's pretty slow. And I used to be a very good runner.
A great runner, right.
And so, you know, I never understood why those old people have to run so slow. Maybe they just think they're old. But no.
Well, okay, so that's a really good point, and I have a really interesting experiment that I would like to share apropos exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
It's an experiment that was run at Harvard University in 1979, and it was run by a team of psychologists. And what they did was they took a group of men who were all 75 years of age, and they for 1 week, before they did the experiment, they measured everything, you know, heart, blood pressure, memory, all the biomarkers. They did all kinds of physical and mental tests on these guys. And then they isolated them in a place where they had no contact with the outer world. And there they were to set the intention that for the time, this week where they were together, that we were turning the clock back 20 years, so that they were no longer 75, they were all 55. Right. And the task was, they made this environment so they had no contact with the outer world, and all the magazines, any programs they could hear on the radio or things they could see on the television, everything was 20 years earlier. So this was 1979, and so everything was 1959. Right. And their task was to talk to each other as if they were in that time. And that means that they were in the height of their careers. All these guys were career guys and so on. And so they did this for a whole week, where they had to play act, actually, that it was all happening 20 years earlier. Okay, and then after the week, they came out of this isolated place. They had built a place where they had made everything 20 years the way it looked earlier. The newspapers, Eisenhower was president, all this stuff. And when they came out, they did the same tests on, you know, memory, heart rate, all and they were much younger biologically. Wow. And they found out that they also found out things like, they said on average, they all looked 3 years younger. And they said things like, you know, when you age, that your fingers they shrink. Well, the fingers of all these men, they actually grew. Their memory was improved. All these biological changes happened in just one short week of changing their intention as to who they were physically and mentally. So it's a really fascinating. It's really a fascinating thing to meditate on.
Yeah. Well, I have an experience in my life with my brother.
Yeah, you have a twin.
Right, he's a twin brother. So we are a scientific experiment. And he married a woman his age. He was middle-aged, actually.
When he married her.
His second wife, yeah.
Yeah.
And she was his age. And I've been married to a woman 12 and a half years younger than me. And in the years, like they were together for about 20 years. And during the last 10 years they were together, she became very old and sickly and decrepit. And he was mirroring that.
Yeah.
He was, behaving in ways that just seemed older and, less capable than I felt. And I'm with a younger woman, and so I'm identifying
with her. It's exactly the
her.
same as this experiment. You're absolutely right.
And then a few years ago, his wife died, and he's become, I think, younger since. Because he doesn't have that conditioning around him. So we have to look at the conditioning we have around us as we age.
Yeah.
We reflect on that speaks to us about who we are, what to believe about ourselves. And the medical community doesn't make it easier.
They definitely don't. I mean, you go to the doctor, the first thing they look at is your age, and then they say, oh, you're doing really well for your age. It's like, kill me now.
Well, but for instance, at our age, you're younger than I am, but you're still, we're still in the same category. They don't want to believe that I don't use medications. Because most people my age have maybe a dozen medications that they're on.
Exactly.
And so, it's just in the territory that we're in, most people don't believe that they're supposed to be youthful and healthy.
Well, I mean, I also sort of try to, it's not that I don't want people to know my age, but I do it on purpose because it classifies you. So the thing is, I want people to judge me for my energy and, who I am in this now moment, as you were saying.
But you look so young and vibrant, and you behave so vibrantly that it doesn't matter what age you say you are, because people aren't, they won't believe you. And that'll be
That's true, but it's important to see the fact that there are so many people who, as you were just saying, who let themselves. So again, in terms of my book, The Road to Power, I'm all into self-empowerment to take our power back, and that we can see that, okay, we're not in charge of the whole universe, but the focus of our own personal attention as to what our attention is focused on in terms of our body and so-called the passage of time, that we do have some influence.
Well, we have to look at how we've been conditioned.
What
our beliefs are about it that we can, disown. And
so this mantra that I use a lot is that I'm an infinite being. I'm not subject to that. I'm only subject to what I hold in mind. So in other words, to work on deprogramming ourselves. That's something we can't do it completely. And of course, the collective consciousness does influence us. But that we can try to be as aware of it as possible.
Right. And for instance, I'm, in my age, and I don't mind saying I'm 76, and I like to be old. I like
that's something else.
I like the idea that I don't reflect my age. And so I like to say how old I am, and people go, oh, you can't be that old. You don't look it, you don't sound it, you don't act it. And that I like that. So that's a good reflection for me.
Good. I'll buy that.
Right. But I also, on an esoteric level, I really I'm every day feeling more and more multidimensional, more and more that I am this spirit looking through this world that I've been living in this body that I've been living in this name I've been living in. And all of the attributes that my life has been born to, for instance, the cards that I've been born to, and the human design I've been born to, all these things, and I can't help but being those things in this life. But I also see myself as greater than this life, that I am an eternal being experiencing Peter Roth, and kind of that lightens the load. It really
it does, absolutely. I mean, places ourselves in the grand design, you could say, in the greater perspective, that we're infinite beings and that we are all the time having these different soul experiences, or whatever you want to call it, but that this happens to be, we happen to be here now.
right. So being the light of our soul.
Exactly, that we're all evolving, and that whatever the learning is, I mean, that this is the wisdom that comes with the passage of time, because we're on this infinite, endless, eternal journey. So,
right, and there are younger people who know that too. Like, for instance, your son Tim, I know, he's an advanced thinker, and he probably understands.
You have his book Star Brow and Star Warrior is all about ascension and the higher dimensions and the great white brotherhood and the ascended masters. I mean, that we are this multidimensional. In his book, it's the concept of the star seeds, that we have come here from the Pleiades, and to lift the consciousness of planet Earth. All of these ways of looking at what you're just saying, it's wonderful.
Right, and I just had a show recently with a woman who does past life regressions, and done them for 26 years, and has found that many people go back to past lifetimes on other planets, and that they've come here to help because other planets are more advanced than here.
Exactly. Tim's book is all about that. There's past life regressions and being a starseed in another system, coming here to help lift the consciousness. You can see what is really needed right at this time.
Right, but when you have this perspective that it's all transitory, we're here for a time, a special time of transition on this planet, and it looks like we're transitioning into doom and gloom, but it's really more of getting the toxins out of our system before we can appreciate the light even more. See, I think a lot of the young people are really star children and are here for a grander future.
Wonderful to think about.
And
but also that we have had this opportunity. I mean, the gift of again, the work that you do, the work that I do. I mean, obviously, this has been our, if you would say, our mission or our destiny, and we love it because it's in alignment with our soul essence, or whatever you want to call it. That's what we're about.
Right, and I think in relationship to aging, we're understanding the journey better this way, and appreciating not. I think so many people are caught in their bodies, in their lives, feeling trapped in ways that are missing so much of who they really are on a larger scale. And once you know that, and I don't mean that religiously either, like.
No, spiritually you mean it.
Yeah.
But I would say also that that's one of the things that, I hesitate to call it aging, but when people are more challenged physically, if it's illness, if it's age-related or not age-related, but that it makes you question, am I more than just this physical body? And that's a good thing, because that, again, what you're talking about is we're much more than these bodies.
Well, we have to be, because as we get older in our 70s, the body does misbehave in ways that it didn't in our 40s and 50s. And we look at that, and it's all about how you hold it. And,
Exactly.
you know, if you are your body, then you're in trouble.
You're really in trouble.
Right.
Again, and if you think about it, I often do this exercise with clients when they start with the body, there's so much of body identification. I always ask people, well, if you drop dead tomorrow, I mean, are people going to remember you for how your body looked? I mean, we're going to remember the people we love with the qualities of their soul. I mean, were they loving, and were they, you know, did they have humor, or what kind of person, whether they have a brilliant mind? And we don't remember, maybe there's a few people how big their breasts are. I mean, there are some, I do realize that, but mostly we don't, if we think about people, we don't remember them for how big their feet are, or,
Well,
you know, how
I'm
much.
thinking of friends who died, one in particular who was a great athlete. And he was
Well, okay, but that was a
national
special case,
class
you could
swimmer.
say.
And so I
Right.
remember his prowess, his physical prowess. He was
Mm-hmm.
great, but then he didn't last. And so what
Mm-hmm.
happened, well, you know, but he was a wonderful human being. And so,
Okay, so again, so you don't just remember him for his body.
right, right. But it's a combination of things,
Yeah.
because he,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say that he loved sport, he loved competing. And so you remember the love
Mm-hmm.
that he expressed in what he did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Mm-hmm.
the
But
dedication
I mean,
that we have to things is
but
also what we're remembered by.
but you would say that if you think about the spiritual teachers that you really love, like the Dalai Lama, people who have this great wisdom and compassion. I mean, when he's not in his physical body anymore, I mean, okay, we can remember how he looked like, but that's not what we're gonna. We cherish the. I mean, you have met him. I have met him. I mean, there's something about the power of his presence. That's what I'm gonna remember.
Right.
Um,
There's a universality of deep understanding and wisdom that he presented.
exactly.
And,
Exactly.
and that's what we can treasure about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to see that in ourselves. So as we measure ourselves, because this is all about, this is a show about measurement and how we measure ourselves or not, or what
Yeah,
we
or trying to get rid of that the inappropriate measurement.
Yeah, but we have to understand, have perspective to see what to choose and what not to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why your book, The Road to Power, Fast Food for the Soul, is so wonderful, because you do go through a lot of the stuff that we need to look at to make better choices for ourselves,
Exactly.
be more
Exactly. Thank
powerful.
you.
So I think in the aging process, we really need to have a perspective, a larger perspective in life than
Mm-hmm.
the limited aspect of numbers and age, and yet not
I would say what you're
denial.
saying there is we need to tell a better story, and that's actually what you're saying. We need
Right,
to rewrite the script.
right. But it's not about going into denial. It's about
Mm-hmm.
including our age. Don't deny it. Including the fact that we don't have the same power, physical power, and get up and go that we might have had years ago. It's a different scale, but that's just the
Well,
nature.
I would like I understand what you're saying, but my question here is, if you're in alignment with your soul energy, if you're in alignment with who you really are, it's like my book about find and follow your inner compass. If we're actually in alignment with our integrity, our soul nature, or whatever, that the energy in our body is flowing freely. If we just take
Right,
that as,
that's the point, is really
yeah, but so
what
if we're out of alignment in terms of we don't have, we don't have a healthy boundaries, we have low self-esteem, all these things which take us away from our true essence. that stresses the whole physical system. The energy is not in alignment anymore. So I would modify this about the passage of time, that we need to understand that there are many different factors that we end up experiencing physical decline. But is it just the passage of time, or is it also that we're not in alignment with our true selves?
Right. And so what I think we'll do another show on soon in the future is self-worth, self-esteem, and
Exactly.
how that, chops down our power.
Yeah. So again, I mean, again, so because it's really important, I think, to notice how differently people age, and to try to identify what are the other factors. And this is one of them, that how stressful is their life situation, how in alignment with their true soul essence, or their mission, or whatever you want to call it, their keynote. There are the people who are thriving the most, they are somehow more in alignment.
And I think following more of a spiritual path can bring us out
Okay.
of the limitations of the physical world. And
Right.
so, but we're really out of time.
Okay.
Beam Team.
Beam Team. Yes.
Beamteam.com is your address, so people can
Right.
go to that.
Right. And I'm giving away a free ebook about the way the mind works, called The Mental Laws, Understanding the Way the Mind Works. So if you go to beamteam.com, it'll tell you how to get the free ebook if you'd like to have a quick intro to my work.
Great. Barbara Berger, thanks again so much for being a guest on Energy Stew.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure as usual.
And this is Peter Roth, your host at Energy Stew. I can be reached at peter@heartriver, HEART river.org. I'd love to hear from you, and thanks so much for listening.